So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and their challenges and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning I'm delighted to have with us Lisa Shepherd, who's the co-founder and director at the Biskery. And so firstly, Lisa, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, the Biskery, and how you help people and the wonderful things you do, that would be great.
Hello, thanks for having me, Chris. Yes, I'm Lisa Shepherd, co-founder and owner of the Biskery. We are an online business specializing in personalized and branded biscuits. We recently rebranded, so you might have heard of Bloom Bakers. That used to be us.
Yes.
My partner in business is Saskia Roscom. She's not here today, but whenever I say we or even me, then she is 50% of everything. So I'm not taking all the laurels here.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about the sort of things you do. I think you mentioned that you've got some unique services, especially around providing things for events.
Yes. So we started as a little store at a farmer's market, really. Saskia and I started the business. I say the business, at that point it wasn't even a business, and when we had very young children it was more of an outlet for our creativity than a money-making machine. We both have a background in digital marketing, but we also really like baking, and after having children it all seemed a bit of a struggle. The work-life balance wasn't quite there. So we decided to add another layer and also start a business. But eventually it led to us being able to quit our jobs and focus on the business full time. And today family friendliness is really big for us. So we work school hours. We offer that similar flexibility to our employees, more of that later. But what we pride ourselves in today is that we're really agile business. We respond to inquiries. We have a totally bespoke service. So other than the biscuits that can be imprinted or embossed with any message or logo, we also offer a completely new service, which is a live biscuit printing service for events. So we come to your event with our new laser printer and we can print whatever you'd like on those biscuits in real time. It takes about 2 minutes to print about 10 biscuits. And it's been going fantastically. We've been down to London to do this a couple of times, and we'd love to do more here in Yorkshire because it's such an innovative and fun thing to do, and it gets everybody talking and wanting to stream to your stall.
Wonderful, wonderful. What an interesting thing. That must be quite funny. Must raise a crowd as well, people watching this. Do people actually watch the printing going on in the events?
Yes, they do. Yeah. So the idea was that people, when you go to those trade events, it can all be a bit dull. The products are maybe a bit dry. And people come up with all sorts of wonderful ideas to get people interested in your stall. You might have seen people selling, fancy coffee, not selling, but offering fancy coffees. Yes. Or like a machine that does some sort of gaming and VR stuff I've seen. But we were approached by a company who's based in Israel to ask if we could do the printing, live biscuit printing service, because they had done something like that in Las Vegas and they couldn't find anyone in the UK who offered that. And we knew about the machine. We didn't own it, but we knew about it. So we accepted. We had 3 weeks to order the machine, get our heads around it, and order book our train to London, and we made it work, and it was fantastic. So now there's something we offer UK wide. And it gets people talking. On the second day of the event, everybody came to the stall just for the biscuits. We basically take a picture of the person who comes to the stall, then send it to the machine prints it onto the biscuit, and while it prints, the sales team has an opportunity to get their little pitch in. So it's just the right amount of time it takes. People don't get bored waiting for the biscuit, but the sales team has enough time to have a meaningful conversation.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. That's I can think of a few businesses that would benefit from that. They do quite a lot of events and exhibitions and things. So you mentioned a little bit about my background. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and I guess this particular one was, as you say, an outfall for your creativity.
Yeah, that's how it started. So we, not in our wildest dreams did we think we'd be where we are today when we started. We literally just wanted to have a bit of fun. And we kept saying to each other, it feels like playing shops as a child. We were just, baking at home after our kids had gone to bed. It was like, when friends meet for coffee or for drink, we were never really people who go out much. So we met at Saskia's house or my house and baked. And then the next day we would take it to a little farmer's market. But because of our digital background, we started building a website and an online presence from day one, really. I guess it was just ingrained in us how many people you can reach with that. And we just did the work slowly, little by little, and people started to find us on Google. So I think about a year into the business, Penguin Publishers approached us and asked if we could create logo biscuits. And we were like, wow, okay, we're just us baking from home, but why not? We know what we're doing. We do provide great biscuits. They taste nice as well. And then, so with every inquiry, we kind of increased our offering and our range. So at that stage, we didn't really do logo biscuits, but we looked into it and then we ordered the equipment we needed. And we started with a £500 cash injection from both our pockets. That was all we had to give the business. And then every profit we made, we put back into the business. So it took about 3 years until we took any money out of the business. And then it took a pandemic for us to actually quit our other jobs, because contrary to what we expected, we did really well during the pandemic. And I know that's something you focus on in your work, that you talk about stories of businesses who changed and thrived maybe during the pandemic. And we're definitely one of those that we just looked at each other and said, if we can survive a pandemic, then we should focus on this and give this our full attention. And that changed everything. So in a way, it was a good thing for us. So today we're a team of 9, have our own premises in North Leeds, and we bake about 80% of what we do is B2B. So logo biscuits for events and launches, staff gifts, client gifts, and then 20% is our web shop where people can buy little gift boxes, letterbox friendly biscuit gifts.
Wonderful. Well, really fascinating. And as you said about COVID and lockdown, I talk a lot with people about resilience at the moment, and quite a few people talk about maintaining a positive mindset through the current sort of recessive cycle and cost of living crisis. And you bang on. My opinion, any business that can survive the COVID and lockdown, given the severity of it and what it meant for many people, shows a level of resilience that means we should be able to survive anything, really.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was also a level of naivety, maybe. We didn't rely financially on the business at that time still. And we didn't have a lot of expenses. We were still baking from home and we didn't have any staff. So we were lucky in that sense that there was no pressure. But what it meant for us was that I think for many people, the pandemic was a bit of a wake-up call of like, why are we doing what we're doing? And I think that is what changed everything for us. So when the lockdowns were imposed, Saskia and I looked at each other and we said, this is such a scary time. No one knows what's going to happen. We want to do something to lift the spirits a little bit. And obviously we're no healthcare professionals, no key workers, but we said we do really nice biscuits. So let's just send free biscuits to people. People can nominate someone who they miss, who they can't see right now. And we send them a biscuit with an encouraging message like stay safe or missing you, completely free of charge. And we did that literally just as a nice gesture. There was no PR idea in the background. It was just, let's do this. I feel like I want to do something. But that led to huge exposure online. Someone shared it on Leeds List, the Yorkshire Post covered it. And that led to more orders of those biscuits that we could handle. So we had to limit that scheme because it was completely unlimited to start with. And then we said, I think we could send 50 a week or something. Because mind you, we had our day job still. We had 2 kids to homeschool each. So it was a busy time. So we limited it. But what then happened is that people genuinely wanted to support the business because they saw that we were a force for good, that we, it's good people behind it, working mothers, all of this that people want to support more of these days. And that meant our B2C orders went through the roof. So the B2B completely died. Obviously, there were no corporate events. There were, offices were closed. But the B2C, I think we saw 400% increase. And that carried us through the pandemic. So I would add a little bit of naivety because for us that none of that was planned. But again, I'm a huge believer in, if you put your whole self into something, and if you believe in your idea, and if you have strong values, if it's all, the foundation is rooted in strong values, then there's no reason why you shouldn't succeed.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And what a lovely story. I mean, that's what a wonderful thing to do. And and I completely agree with a strong set of values. And what typically happens, we attract other people, other organisations that we share values, and that that's great because it's a very virtuous connection with other people that believe what we believe. So going back sort of very early days, when you were growing up, was this the sort of thing you saw yourself doing, or did you have other dreams and goals?
I didn't. I mean, there's a very early memory of me saying to my family that I want to be a baker. And they nipped that in the bud. They were like, no, you're going to go to university, and bakers have to get up really early in the middle of the night, and you don't want to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah. But I've always loved baking and eating baked goods for sure. My mum doesn't have a sweet tooth, so there wasn't ever any sweets in our house, and she hates baking. But my granny is a great baker. So when I was 25, she gave me a handwritten book with her favorite recipes. And that's the basis of when Saskia and I started meeting and experimenting. That's the recipes we baked. So our signature biscuit is still based on her German biscuit recipe, which is also a lovely story, that her heritage lives on in those biscuits in a different country now. But what I did want to do when I was younger was work in just with people. I studied communications. I've always liked people's stories, meaningful connections. And in a way, I'm doing that now in a very roundabout and different way. But it's, it has all worked out for us in a funny way.
Wonderful. Another lovely, wonderful story. And looking back at the growth of your business, what are some of the biggest issues you've had to overcome?
I think with being a home bakery, the biggest issue there was that we couldn't scale because we were wearing all the hats. We were, doing the product photography, we're doing the website, we were doing the baking, everything, and we couldn't hire anyone because we were only baking after 7 p.m. and it was from home, so we couldn't, who wants to work like that? So we were limiting ourselves in that sense, but we couldn't scale without having the money that, we needed someone else to be able to afford hiring a place. So the cat was biting its own tail a little bit. So what happened over the years is that we put money aside. We didn't pay ourselves nowhere near enough. So we put money aside to have a little bit of a buffer. And then what happened is when we quit our jobs, we heard through the grapevine that our former employer, a digital marketing agency in Leeds, had an empty canteen because they wouldn't replace the caterer. There just weren't enough people in the office. Most people work from home still. So we just, again, did a bit of an unconventional thing and asked our former employer if we could rent the commercial kitchen as a tiny one, but it would have been enough for us. And he's also a very forward-thinking man, so he agreed at a very fair rate. And that meant we could trial this completely new way of baking from somewhere else and hiring people at the same time. And it was a risky thing to do. We didn't actually have enough orders to pay for the space and employees. And we only wanted to hire one person, but we interviewed 3 and we liked all 3 of them. So we offered all 3 of them a role, only 10 hours to start with. They were all mums and that worked well for them. and it worked, I guess, because we finally had someone to do the baking for us, so we could finally work on the business rather than in the business. And we put all our ideas in, and we revolutionized some of the things we had done before. We just never had time to research proper packaging, and lots of projects like that. And that improved the business, and we were able to do more sales and speak to the right people, work on ourselves a bit more rather than just being hamsters in a wheel. And that changed everything. So it was a huge challenge, but it was also a huge opportunity, and it's changed everything. I mean, having a team is just wonderful. It's amazing to have a tribe of women who believe in what you are creating as much as you do, and they feel so empowered by the way we appreciate them, I suppose, because working mums are very underappreciated in the world of work, I think, and we want to turn that on its head and celebrate them.
Great. I personally believe that they're very much an untapped, valuable resource of people that really can really deliver back into the business community. But because traditional employment, as you say, is 9 to 5, it's difficult to do so. So again, another great thing that you're doing. So thinking about business in general, what are the biggest things you would say? Obviously, you talked about working on it, not in it, but what are some of the other things you've learned about business as you've grown?
I think a big thing for me is that you don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to understand and follow a certain blueprint. You can create it yourself. Like, I've always felt very excluded from the business world. I didn't study business. I felt like that's not accessible to me because I've never been a very conventional thinker, and I've always questioned things, and I was like, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with just making money and running with it. But it doesn't have to be like that. And I think especially women, we tend to reflect and overthink, possibly. I don't want to generalize, but I think that's a huge barrier to many women in business, that they go, oh no, but I don't know about that, or I haven't done that before, or I don't like how it's done. That actually means the business world needs you more because you think like that. And also, nobody has all the answers. So we're all winging it to a certain extent, and it's owning that. And one of our business or company values is authenticity. So you're never going to see us talk about something and pretend that we understand everything we're doing. We are very open about how we build this business, how we're running this business with our employees. Even is quite often that I say, sorry, it's a bit higgledy-piggledy, but we're just learning as much as you are. And I think it's quite a refreshing way of running it, rather than a liability or a vulnerability. I think it can be a huge strength to question the status quo and in a way improve things.
I completely agree. I often say to business owners, business leaders, that the challenge of running a business is ultimately the buck stops with us, the responsibility stops with us. But the great thing about having your own business is you get to choose how it is, and there isn't any pre-formed, pre-decided. Yeah, there's lots of businesses operate in similar ways, but innovation comes from businesses and organisations operating differently. So we get to choose, and finding different ways forward, and certainly ones that work for us and our team, is just brilliant.
And so rewarding. I mean, it's something you create, and you own it all, and it's not oh well, I do well because this person told me I have to do it like that. It's more like, we created this, and that's priceless.
It's interesting. It's very much a coaching approach. Obviously, we're business coaching, but coaching for me is helping people find their way forward, not telling them how to do. Consulting is more about telling people how it's traditionally done, how you would do this. But for me, coaching is about helping people find that way, and that's true in the management part, the coaching part of management, helping our teams find their way through. Because if people are finding their way through, they own their part of the task, the organisation, and the department. And speaking of coaching, being a coaching organisation, I'm keen to know, who are the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general?
There's only really one person who's who we have so much to thank for, and that's Will Polston. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, I know Will. Yeah.
Yeah, so he has worked with us. I think I reached out. Well, it was some sort of Instagram ad that I clicked, and then I did his questionnaire, and then I had a call with him, and from there it all started. I think that was end of 2020. So we had just kind of survived the lockdowns. We're doing well. We're thinking about quitting our jobs. And then this came along, and it was the best timing, really. We had time to reflect. The pandemic was this wake-up call that I mentioned earlier, and we're like, okay, what's the why? Why are we working so hard? What is it actually we want to do? What is it actually we stand for? Because people had asked us in the past, so do you really love biscuits then? It was like, well, I do like biscuits, but that's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's not the biscuits. It's the vessels they are, the messages they send. It's what they make people feel. Is how they make people feel connected, and the power that little. And that's what we saw in the pandemic. People cried when they opened that box, and there was a little letter from their sister who wished them to stay safe because she worked on a COVID ward, and like all these the stories, and we were like, wow, they have a big impact. So Will helped us just get some clarity. So I'm sure that's what you and your colleagues do at Action Coach, that you help people just get some clarity and write down what they actually want, and then put the steps in place that help them get there. And that's what Will did with us. And it was the most incredible thing. I'd never done anything like it before. So to write down your dreams, and now I look back, 2 years later, and we're right on our way. Like just the other day, I sent him a message saying it's just unbelievable, because I had this list of, we would like to have our own premises, and we want them to be in walking distance from home, and we want them to be a nice airy space, lots of natural light. And it's all that now, and it's like, how it's almost like it just happens. Of course, you've worked really hard for it, but if you'd never written it down, you never knew what you were working towards. So that's what changed everything for us. So I couldn't vouch more for working with a coach.
Brilliant, wonderful, that absolutely fantastic. And it, as you say, by writing it down, we start to both visualize what it's going to be like, and that helps we call it the reticular activator system, as part of our subconscious, that helps us see and find the things that we want because we visualize them. So we're sort of programming and saying, well, we need somewhere, as you say, close to work, we can walk there, it's bright an area, then all of a sudden something comes along and it fits that image. Therefore, we find it. But if we don't know, then we can't know that that's the right thing for us. So it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And have you picked up any sort of favourite quotes or sayings that you've used or fall back on a regular basis, Lisa?
I think one I use quite a lot is that everything you need is already inside you. Because again, it's so easy to look at what others do, to compare yourself. As a woman in business, we are the minority. And it's so easy to ask others for the answers. And then they, as you say, with consultants, we had a growth manager come to see us once, and he was all about, oh yeah, but you should see a little bit more growth than you're seeing right now. And he didn't even ask about our business structure. On average, we work 20 hours a week. It's like, of course we could grow faster, but we work half the time that most people work. So it's not about the fast growth for us. It's about sustainable growth and having the right, we all have 2 children, we don't want to work 50-hour weeks. I love my business, but I love my children more. And so all of that is, I think it is easy to get carried away with what the experts say or what the media says. And I think sometimes it's really important to tune back in with yourself and go, hold on, what is it I want? What is it I can do by myself? And where do I say no to even the most recommended experts and say that I appreciate that, but it's not for me.
100%. An expert gives you their opinion, they don't help you find yours. And I think I was told when I first was trained as an action coach, one of the first things that I learned was that the root of the word education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to draw out, which is really interesting, because traditional education feels like it's to push in, push facts in and
Yeah.
whereas drawing out and I love that, and it's always stuck with me that's again a root of, the core of coaching is to draw out of the person. And what you said is I completely agree with, and I say myself, is that we've all got everything we need inside ourselves. We've just got to find a mechanism to draw it out.
Yeah, it's like the unlearning, isn't it? There's so much about, as children, we're born really quite wise, but then we get all these opinions forced on ourselves, and eventually we forget who we are, what we want, and then we have to unlearn it again. And yeah, I see that a lot.
And I think it's the classic example also is, what is success? I think you've just you were talking similar before, is because success for each of us is going to be just very different,
Yeah.
and it's being clear on what our own success is, so that we can move towards that rather than somebody else's. And as you say, sometimes we have a set of goals that are on what we think we should have, or we think other people would want us to have, or all these sorts of crazy stuff. And coming back to authenticity, it's when we really get clear on what we consider to be success in whatever mode it would be. So what would you say you've learned about yourself through your journey so far, Lisa?
So much. I think again, Will used to say starting your own business is the biggest exercise in self-development that you can ever do. I think I would add being a mother is probably even bigger. So we did both at the same time. So I'm probably a completely different person than I was 7 years ago when I had my daughter and we started this. I think what I learned about myself is that I can do anything I set my mind to, but I also need to make sure that I have a strong that there's meaning in everything I do. So, when we talk about having a purpose-led business, it's not just buzzwords for us. So I think what I would like to add is that we are a successful, profitable business on that side as well. So we're not just fluffy and lovely biscuits and nothing comes back. So we are also looking at that side, obviously, because we're employing a team and they depend on that income. So we do take that seriously. But I think it gets often taken too seriously, and the purpose-led stuff is an afterthought, or once a year for Women's Day people put a nice post up. But for us, it's at the corner, it's the cornerstone of everything we do, that we question how we do things, we put meaning into everything we do. It's just who we are as people. Saskia's just the same. We're quite deep thinkers, quite a lot. I think for some people we're probably too much. But again, that's what we found out about ourselves, and there's no point hiding that. So that is probably the biggest thing I realized. And also how introverted I am. So that's something I probably only found out in the pandemic. Before I was always like, a bit of both, or on the spectrum here and there. But I've realized that I love human connection. I love speaking to people. I love getting to know more people, but it takes away my energy. So I do need to make sure I replenish that and take my time afterwards to let it all settle. So that's another big lesson that came with running this business and being the face of it, and here, then, everywhere. And every now and then I was like, why am I so tired? It's like, well, because, you need your time to recover and relax and replenish. So again, that's something that I had to learn the hard way, maybe, as a business owner and mother, that I nearly ran myself to the ground in the early days, and had to learn to draw the line and say this much, and then it has to have to call it a day here, because otherwise I'm not operating from my best place, and that's no good for anybody.
No, that's very very, very wise. That's quite really interesting that you've managed to sort of self-learn that. That's quite deep, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was as I say, I was in quite a bad place at one point, and I had to just change the way I was doing things. So today I'm quite disciplined, and sometimes it feels selfish, and sometimes it feels that I'm not wanting to put the time into it, but I know that it will be better for the business and me, and especially my family in the long run, if I just don't do that extra hour now and just switch off. And it's hard at times because it excites me. I could work on the business all day long, and in a way that's another thing for working mothers, that we have that natural break in the day, I suppose, where the children come home and you can't work anymore in the business unless it's completely stressful if you sit here and try sending an email and the kids run around. I mean, with younger kids anyway. So there's only so many hours I can put into the business fully. The rest of the time I don't have the headspace to do it properly, and then I'd rather not do it. So again, it's this focus mode, like this is business and now it's my family, and I try really not to mix the two too much anymore. Now the pandemic's over and not everybody's home, because that was a different story.
Brilliant. So looking forward, what does the future look like for you in the business, and what do you see as the main challenges moving forward, if any?
So many ideas. I think our challenge is always to focus on the best thing at any point in time, because we get inquiries to do this and invitations to collaborate on that, and people inquire about, and it's like, okay, where? And I don't know if you heard about is it Oliver Burke who did the 400 weeks? What is it now? The number, that lifetime you have, basically. He wrote a book about it.
4,000 weeks.
4,000 weeks, yeah. And it was mind-blowing. I listened to a podcast with him, and he said the big challenge is not to say no to the things you don't want to do, is saying no to the things you want to do, but they are not as good as the things you really need to do. So we find ourselves in that space quite a lot, that there's so many things we could be doing, but eventually they distract from our bigger goal, or we just don't have enough time to do that in addition to the stuff we really need to do. So I think what we'd really like to explore more is these events, because we think it's amazing that there's nobody else doing this in the UK, so there's huge scope. And they're also great fun, and I think they can bring so much value to businesses. Like the companies we've worked for so far, they said the ROI was incredible. It's a big expense to start with, but they had so many amazing conversations off the back of them. They've had so much interest, and it was 100% worth doing them. So we'd like to enable more businesses to experience that. We'd also like to grow our B2C offering, maybe with a subscription box, because obviously that is then a recurring income, which would, we are now, we're starting to have more repeat clients and regular customers, but it would be great to have something ticking over in the background that we can just rely on as we grow the business. Challenge is probably going to be the space again, because we can probably triple operations in this space we are in now, but after that we will need a new space, and that was quite hard to find that and kit it all out, and I don't even want to think about having to move again. So yeah, that is. But it's a good challenge, isn't it? Because it means you're growing. So I'm not wishing it away. Yeah, I mean, members of staff, again, we attract so many amazing people. So we get a message probably weekly of someone who wants to join the team, and we'd like to give them all an opportunity, but we can't. Again, is saying no and saying let's keep in touch, and maybe things happen quite fast with us. Maybe in 3 months we have a role. So it's that's the toughest bit, I think, when people really want to work with you, and you just you're not quite ready yet, or you don't want to be too risky. So yeah, that's a few of the things.
Brilliant, very exciting times, clearly, which is wonderful. I love the fact that you're thinking about what it's going to be like when you're 3 times as big. It's like, a lot of people I speak to, they're thinking about 10-20% growth, what it's going to be like there, but now you're already planning that or thinking about what that might be. So that's wonderful. and because you're thinking about it, it's clearly going to happen. So sorry, sorry for that observation, but I think you're gonna have to prepare for it because it's clearly there for you. So I'm really keen to know, Lisa, what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
I would say, I think the big thing I see with people is they feel they have to reinvent the wheel. And I'd say you don't, I say go with something that you feel passionate about. It doesn't have to be your number one thing you love in life. Biscuits are not my number one thing in life, but you can shape it into something that you really believe in. So we now say that biscuits are what we sell, they're our commodity, but our real product is kindness and connection. And that's something that I really stand for. The biscuit, it could also be a card. If I was an amazing graphic designer, then we would probably be selling cards. I happen to like biscuits and I'm an all right baker, so that's what we did. But it's more than that. So I'd say that to people. I'd say you don't have to invent something that no one's seen before. You don't have to find the one thing. You can just start somewhere and change and grow and adapt from there, and the market will give you feedback, whether you sell offline or online. And if you are small and agile, then you can change things so quickly. I would also say you don't need tons of money, again, depending on what you do. Obviously, some businesses need a lot of money, but if you can, there's so many things you can start from home, from your kitchen table, with a little bit of money and resources. So I think, if you are resourceful, you can find so much information online. You can ask people. There's networking groups. There's all sorts of forums you can speak to the right people about, friends, family. Don't be afraid to ask for help or advice. We reached out to someone in the very early days and asked if he wanted to be a bit of a mentor. And we had such an important conversation with him very early on. And he saw things that we didn't even see. He said, guys, you're building a brand. And we're like, are we? And he was like, think about what you want to do later on. Do you always want to be baking, or do you want to do something else? What is it that really excites you? And we were like, what do you mean we're not going to be baking? It seemed impossible. And now I haven't baked for months. But it's I'd say just start somewhere, and little by little, small steps, baby steps, with your big goal in mind, and with strong values at the foundation of it all. Then and don't be afraid to change things. We started a market stall selling cakes and biscuits and all sorts, and we realized when it was a bad weather day, we would go home with half of the stuff we'd baked. So then we changed to the biscuits because they had a longer shelf life and they could be posted, which doesn't mean that we don't like cake anymore or we were a failure. It was like it worked better for us. So we changed and adapted and made it even better. So I think, don't be afraid of change, and go with where the demand is. If someone says, can you do that, and it's not against your values, then why not give it a go?
Very, very, very sound advice. And just looking back, if you were to start again, is there anything that you do differently significantly?
I don't think so, because I have no regrets. I'm really thankful for our journey, because I think we needed all this time to really grow as people, to become so clear on what we stand for and what is important to us. I think if we'd done that any faster, we wouldn't have been able to really enhance that meaning in it all. So I think I would maybe be a bit less risk averse. I think Saskia and I have always been a bit like, when it's 100% clear that we're not gonna lose anything, that's when we're doing it. I think in the future, and we are starting to be like that, we're like, let's just do this because we know we'll make it work. So I think we could have done that years ago. We could have quit our jobs much earlier. But I say that, who knows what would have happened. So I wouldn't, but I think looking back, I would tell other people in that stage now to be brave and to if they really believe in it, they're gonna make it work. So I think I knew it. I knew that deep down, but I think we were playing it very safe.
Brilliant. I think it's great, and I think, you know, I often say to Phil myself, if anything was different, then I may not be here, and if I like where I am, then you know, it's that whole sliding doors idea that if I took one different decision, maybe things would be different. But very interesting. And finally, Lisa, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you're able to go back in time and do so?
Oh goodness, 18. I think, to be honest, when I was 18, I was probably following my heart and my gut more than I was a bit later on. I think, for example, I went to uni to study languages and communication purely because I loved it. There was no preparation for a great career there. And I always had those awkward moments at family gatherings or any sort of semi-professional meeting where people said, so what do you want to do with this after? And I was like, I don't know. And everyone else, you know, studying medicine were like, oh yeah, look at my cousin doing this. And I was the one like, oh God, look at her with her petty degree. But I stood by it, you know. I felt I learned a lot, and I loved every day. I loved going to uni. So I think back then I was probably quite true to myself. I think what I would say her is own it, because I did question it sometimes of like, why am I not? Should I just be doing, you know, the whole, again, looking outwards. And I think I would just say to her, you do you know, stay on your path. Don't put yourself down because someone is doing it in a sneaky comment or comparing you to someone who you share no values with, or you know, whose lifestyle wouldn't be for you. So yeah, I would just give her some reassurance that she's doing all right.
Brilliant, wonderful. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for your time. So it's been really fascinating and really interesting, actually. Some different views on various things that are really fascinating, and we wish you really well. And it'd be great to swing by in another 6-12 months and just see how close we are to needing to go to that next property. And for anyone that's watching that'd like to know a little bit more about you or the Biskery, what would be the best way to contact you?
So I'm quite active on LinkedIn, Lisa Shepherd at the Biskery. We have a lovely little website, thebiskery.com. You can browse our web shop if you're in need of a gift for anybody, or if you are looking for corporate biscuits for any sort of event or launch or the like, or would like to find out more about the printing service that we do, you can inquire via the website or message me on LinkedIn. And what I wanted to mention as well is our Gratitude Day. So every Tuesday, we encourage people to practice gratitude. So we have a limited amount of thank you biscuits available, which is a bit of a remnant from the biscuits from the pandemic. And people can check them out with a discount code, which is 100 gratitude, from 10 o'clock every Tuesday, and send a biscuit to someone with a personalized note just to send them a little note of appreciation, and in biscuit form as well. And it's we always say it's a win-win-win situation. So the person who sends it obviously feels that little rush of like, I did something good. The person who receives it is obviously super happy because they feel appreciated and they have a nice biscuit. And we feel super happy because we're facilitating the whole thing. So Tuesday, 10 o'clock, look at all the, you know, social media. We usually plastered all over to make sure people know about it. So it's a nice way if you want to send yourself one to try one of our biscuits for free.
Thank you so much. I will. I'll check that out. And yeah, again, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.